Hello and welcome back to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video I'll be concentrating on the punchy poem by William Wordsworth, She Dwelt Among the Untrodden Ways. Hit subscribe if you want to join my tribe for all things English, literary and grammatical. So let's get on with it. This poem was composed whilst Wordsworth and his sister Dorothy were in Germany, and it would seem that this point in his diaries also offers us an insight into his frustrations. Wordsworth, in his poetry and in his diaries, shares thoughts on the human condition that aren't just something we should take for granted, they caused a sensation in their day. He predates thinkers who define what we now call psychology, like Freud. He's sharing marvels that people are really clawing at in his poetic works. He shares a philosophy, if you like, that focuses on how we are born pure but fall into earthly imperfections with age. This philosophy ties in with other romantics and other thinkers on education like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And it's interesting as well, this idea of being born a blank slate for the world to corrupt us. I wonder if in part his time spent in Paris during the French Revolution may have influenced this. He asserts in his diaries that city life created conditions that allowed one to be corrupted more easily. If you like, the equation that we need to use for Wordsworth is that being close to nature means being purer. So the fascinating question I'm left with when I look at the title of this poem is, who is she? She dwelt among the untrodden ways. And that question is never truly answered. This poem is one of 5 that form what we call the Lucy poems. Now, these were not intentionally grouped by Wordsworth as the Lucy poems, but they feature a character called Lucy, who is elusive in that we never know exactly who she is, whether she's just imagined or if she's a representation of the simple people of the countryside who are purer because they are closer to nature. Now, if we look at the etymological roots of the name Lucy, it has roots in the word light. So could this be a woman who lives an unappreciated and peaceful life, who we need to look to as an idol of what living with nature can be like? It's also important for us to note that the title, She Dwelt Among the Untrodden Ways, it's full of mono and disyllabic words, aside from untrodden, which echo the diction and simplicity that Wordsworth heralded as something special. He goes against those that went before him. As opposed to talking about perfect diction, he's all about simplicity. It's plain speech. It's, if you like, taking it back to basics. Wordsworth is not insulting a character like Lucy. Instead, he reveres her. He thinks simple people are wonderful. This is in a way a poem that acts as a love note to the power of nature and the hold of being true and authentic. So as we dig into it, let's consider what Lucy represents. Please comment down below your thoughts on this poem too. So let's read it. She dwelt among the untrodden ways, beside the springs of Dove, a maid whom there were none to praise, and very few to love. A violet by a mossy stone, half hidden from the eye, fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky. She lived unknown, and few could know when Lucy ceased to be. But she is in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. So each of the 3 stanzas we look at is a quatrain. It's composed of 4 lines, and the rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F. It's really the recipe for a ballad. But unlike ballads that fell before Wordsworth, with Milton and Shakespeare that used elevated diction, actually there's none of that showiness here. It's really the simplicity of language mirrored with the structure that seems so simple, that stresses the power of the humble actions and modest life that's unacknowledged, with the concentration on a character named Lucy. So stanza 1 introduces her life, her pastoral life if you like, where she is comfortable, dwelling in these untrodden ways, so out of sight but she's beside the springs of the Dove. There are 3 rivers that could be termed the Dove in England alone. And we're also kind of shown that she's at ease by the river, but she's also seemingly isolated and alone. She's a maid where there were none to praise and very few to love. The poetic voice is pretty clear here. They seem sympathetic, emotive, that she deserves love. And in many ways, this is a love poem for her closeness to nature and the wonderful qualities she has that the world ignored. As we move into stanza 2, we see the figurative appreciation of Lucy, the character, and the appreciation in particular of a life overlooked. We're given 2 figurative images. The first, in line 5, of a violet by a mossy stone. That metaphor of her being this striking, beautiful, both colourful and personified image of a violet by a frankly dull-looking stone accentuates how vibrant and different she is. I think there's something also quite powerful structurally around these offset lines that we meet that draw into our view what's indented. So as you can see, the line that follows is half hidden from the eye. Now, it's interesting that she could be overlooked whilst being described as striking enough to be the violet by a mossy stone. To me, this seems almost a contradiction. You can't be both these things. Yet, it almost seems random, these 2 images that we encounter in stanza 2, as we move on to the simile, the next figurative image, and she's fair as a star. Now, upon one glance, that might seem completely irrelevant to this violet by a mossy stone, but actually, both these images prove to show and accentuate the same thing. The simile shows how she outshines all the others around her with her eclipsing beauty and her virtues. If her name truly means light, the only one that's shining in the sky, being Lucy, has even further significance. But each of these figurative references shows she's lonely and remote, whether she's the only violet by the mossy stone or the only star that's shining. It's tinged with sadness. And it's also interesting to note that in stanza 2, it's quite a dodgy rhyme, where it's C and C for stone and one. These are really I rhymes. They don't look like true rhymes when we hear them out. Stone and one are certainly half rhymes at the very most. Now, as we glance onto stanza 3, we really reflect on her death and the impact that this has really on the poetic voice. And there's a huge turning point in the final 2 lines of this poem. She lived unknown and few could know when Lucy ceased to be. The strength of the loss and the powerlessness signalled by the reference to the grave and how she ceased to be. The fact that few could know also acknowledges this sense that the poetic voice sees themselves as privileged to know her. But the volta, that turning point, comes in the final 2 lines of this poem, which concentrates completely on the poetic voice, as marked by the shift to the connective in line 11 of but. But she is in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. Now, Wordsworth is often accused of being quite hyperbolic or exaggerational, but to some extent, the exclamation mark at the end of this stanza and the exclamation of oh really does suggest that there's an impact. This is almost an understatement for this poetic voice. This Lucy character made a big difference, a big impact. Their pure life led in such a humble way that's not been acknowledged by the world, has been revered and acknowledged by Wordsworth, that simple people who idolise nature, they deserve to be valued. I'd love for you to note down whether you see this as sad, nostalgic, or actually just an acclamation of how humans should be close to nature. Comment down below and let me know what you think. Why not subscribe to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar for all things English, literary and grammatical?